Welcome to Tagami Vision. I'm Phil Tagami. With us in the studio today is candidate for Council District 3, Greg Hodge. Greg has been active and involved in Oakland for many years, serving on the Oakland Unified School Board, as well as a number of other causes, including serving as the district chairman for Boy Scouts of America. Greg, welcome, and thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Phil. It's good to be here.
There are some who say that Oakland's either headed in the right direction or it's on the wrong track. Do you have a feeling as to where we are?
I think we're in a bit of a stall, actually. I think Oakland has great potential for being the kind of city that would be a model for the country and the world, for that matter. We've got the natural environment. We've got a lot of bright people like yourself, folks who are doing amazing work in the arts, in science and technology. And so I think Oakland really represents the opportunity to actually move forward. But we can't move forward without good leadership. And in my opinion, we need to have leadership that's going to do at least three things. Listen well to what people have to say. Lift up innovative ideas and tried and true ideas around public safety, around education, around housing and balanced development. And then we got to lead. And we got to lead with some courage and some risk taking. And that's just not happening right now.
So June 3rd comes, you're the victor, and you're facing a budget deficit. Tough decisions need to be made at City Hall. What programs, if any, do you think are cut? Or how do you address the budget deficit? Yeah,
well, I think we got to basically look at our most fundamental needs around public safety. And when I think about public safety, I think both in terms of police services and fire services. When I talk to Local 55 of the Firefighters Union, they share with me the deficiencies in their infrastructure in terms of aging trucks and equipment, the lack of real coverage at the port. So there's some really fundamental infrastructure issues, not real sexy issues, that need to be dealt with. I think from there you begin to look at how do you raise revenue? How do you create more development in the city, more opportunities for people to actually add to the economy, as opposed to thinking about cuts. Cuts are important. We got to get with our labor unions. We got to figure out where our health benefits are going to go, being one of the biggest cost items. But those are the kind of hard decisions that we're going to have to make over the next few years until the economy rebounds and we can actually look at greater revenues to do the things we need to do.
Giving letter grades to the City Council and to Mayor Dellums, or scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate their performance?
This City Council, most of whom have been incumbents for anywhere between 8 and 12 years, like Councilmember Dendell, for instance, in District 3 has been on the council for 12 years. It's a very Reagan-esque question I'd ask people. 12 years later, do you feel like significant change has happened in your city to the positive? And I think most voters in this city feel like we could do much better. And so if I had to give a grade, I'd say some of them get C's and, sort of B minuses. I don't think anybody gets an A right now. We don't get an A because our streets aren't safe. We don't get an A because we don't have balanced development. We don't get an A because we haven't figured out as a full community how to educate our kids for 21st century jobs. So until we all do that, then we probably are going to get a pretty average grade. And if we ask our kids, most of our kids are going to say we're failing.
Tell us about your experience with policymaking and with dealing with budgets.
Okay. I've been a member of the school board now for 8 years during a pretty tumultuous period. We had a state takeover just prior to that takeover, which in many ways came as a result of a 20% pay increase that my predecessors on the board gave to teachers. We had to cut $30 million. Very difficult to cut $30 million out of a $450 million budget. So during that process, I learned a lot about the nooks and crannies of a huge budget. Oakland Unified is the biggest employer in the city. We employ 5,000 people. We serve 49,000 kids. And so much of what I learned in terms of policymaking has to do with first listening to what people have to say about what really makes a difference in the classroom. We created smaller schools at McClymonds, KIPP Academy. We're doing a redesign at Cole and Prescott. But those are the things that people said they wanted. Smaller classrooms, more personalized learning environments for kids. But until we as a city put the resources in to really invest in the technology, to invest in science labs, to invest in bands and arts and the cultural things that we care about, we're going to have trouble. So I think the policymaking is driven by what people say. It's got to be driven by the practicalities of what kind of budget we can work with. And then we've got to hold fast to things that work. In Oakland, a lot of times we'll try something new and we don't stick with it long enough. And so I think that we've got to have the patience to see through some of the great things that could happen. For instance, the work you're doing here in the Fox Arts District area, the anchoring of that with the Oakland Arts School, it's going to make a difference. If you had an administration that came in and say, hey, we're not going to support that, we're going to let that investment just kind of fade away, you're never really going to see any return on that investment. So I think we've got to have good policy making and then stick with it long enough to see what really is going to make a difference.
Is there another candidate, if you were not in the race for District 3, that you would endorse or support?
That's a great question. since that's not the case, I wouldn't say so. I don't know. Right now, I'm not really excited about anybody in the race except what we're trying to do with our candidacy. My candidacy is based on the experience that I've had been working and living in West Oakland and in the city since 1982. It's based on my experiences as a nonprofit leader. I'm a parent, so I understand the needs that parents articulate for what they want to have kids. As I walked in today, one of the employees in this building said, hey, I want to see my kids be able to play on the streets the way that I did when I grew up. I know elders who want to be able to go to a grocery store in their neighborhood if they had one. We don't have a full-service grocery store in our community. Right. There's some things that have not happened over this last 12 years in District 3 and around the city that could be done much better. And so I think that if I weren't in the race, I'd be looking for somebody who came with some energy, with some enthusiasm, and with some experience to get things done, and with enough sense of relationship building to work with folks across, so to speak, both sides of the aisle. In the same way that Barack Obama talks about we got to begin to talk across the aisle, right. In Oakland, we got to stop acting like everybody believes in the same things, because we don't. And we got to be honest about it, and then have the goals that we can actually articulate, and then meet those goals, with some hard work and some hard conversations.
So in Oakland, is it left reaching across to left of left? Or
yeah,
is it,
that's a good way of putting it.
Is that what it is?
Because we're all we all see ourselves as progressives in this community.
That's right.
And somebody asked me, so how can you run against a progressive? Because that's all that ever runs in Oakland.
Right.
I mean, we all say we're progressive. But then, when you start looking at people's personal and political and professional behavior, you can begin to judge what's really progressive. Right. Was it progressive to have Nancy Nadell supporters go into the city clerk's office after I'd been verified for the ballot and upset that process? To use either indirectly or directly the influence of an incumbent to then put into question my candidacy. My candidacy was confirmed. I got a certified letter from the city clerk saying I qualified for the ballot, but I had to go to court to prove the power of one. Right. And for me, the power of one was that it came down to, we took an example of one voter in my neighborhood who's been there for 30 years, right. Who the city clerk did not want to count as a participant in this process. When you do that, you don't honor democracy. It's like if you play baseball and you're on steroids, you don't honor the game. Right. In democracy, you got to honor the process. Let the voters decide. Don't try to take somebody out on a technicality.
So in asking now the question moving forward,
sure.
You bring a lot of passion, a lot of energy to the debate, the discussion. What are the dividing issues? In this race for Council District 3, what separates you between the incumbent and the other challenger?
Yeah. I think the first thing has to do with being able to build relationships on the council to get things done. The incumbent very rarely can get 4 other people to vote with her on any issue. Very rarely. So the thing is, you got to be able to count to 5. You got to be able to get a majority of votes. A good example was that people have been dissatisfied with some of the leadership of the council president. This council had an opportunity with 5 women on the council to actually control that. The incumbent couldn't get 4 of the votes. We couldn't get 4 solid votes around the industrial land use piece. We can't get solid votes on much of anything. And so I think one of the key things has got to be building relationships and having good relationship with everybody in the council enough to get the people's business done.
There are a number of seats up for re-election. There's District 1, 3, 5, 7, and the at-large. Yeah. Are you endorsing in any of those races?
I haven't endorsed anybody in those races yet, except I'm thinking in the at-large race, I got a couple of people I'm talking to now. But what I want to see, and I've been super distracted with having to take the city clerk to court. And this was less than a week ago, and so that distraction kept me from being able to do some of the other things I needed to do. But as we talk about it, I want to see who are the slate of candidates who are really going to come with the energy and the innovative ideas that are going to make this go.
What's the voter universe like in District 3? How many voters are we talking about?
We're talking about 10,000 voters in most elections, which is it's about 40% of
So you're saying the actual turnout?
The actual turnout. And I'm concerned, like most people are who care about participation, that the June 3rd election is going to be a relatively low voter turnout. I hope that every candidacy, that everybody in the city who cares about Oakland will actually create some excitement around this election. We know there's going to be a great turnout in November for the presidential election. But the local elections, and for me, play as much a part in the quality of life in Oakland as the national elections will. So I'm hoping that people will actually come out on June 3rd, and whether they vote for me or not, that they get involved in the process. Right. I think that Oakland is, the size of our city is manageable enough to actually do some things. We got some volunteerism that's a latent power here in the city that doesn't come out, in part because we, sort of cannibalize ourselves. We don't agree on much of anything, and then we just sort of sit in a very neutral, passive sort of way often. So I'm hoping that we'll have some more energetic and vibrant participation in this election that'll make a difference.
So June 3rd, if it's not 50% plus 1, or is it? I mean, what do you predict what's going to happen on June 30th?
Well, I'm
June
not
3rd, sorry.
Muhammad Ali in terms of predicting fights, but I think that there's a good chance that we can get 50+1 in that election if we do the work on the ground. And that's what we're doing. This is a retail politics election. It's knocking on doors. It's talking to people. It's reminding people of the work that we've done. I want people to judge me based on the work that I've done. Not my rhetoric, not what I say, not the oratory, not present well, but I want people to judge it based on the Freedom Schools program that put a lot of kids in after-school programs over the last 15 years. That they'll look at our work on the Workforce Investment Board. They'll pay attention to the things that we've done despite the state takeover in creating better public schools. Those are the things that I hope that people will pay attention to as we move forward.
Earlier you made reference to Barack Obama, so the question of Clinton, Obama, or McCain, for you, that's Obama.
Obama, clearly.
And has that been your position from the beginning?
From the beginning, yeah. I got a call from Kamala Harris, who's a district attorney over in San Francisco, well before the Obama phenomenon really picked up. And I looked at his record. I met him when he was running for the Senate. We had a decent conversation. I know people who know him, Tony West and others, and he represents the kind of change the country needs. And I'm hoping I represent the kind of change Oakland needs. To me, my friends are saying it's kind of interesting analogy. You've got Nancy Nadell and you got Barack and Hillary, you know, somebody who's been around in politics for a longer time, and somebody who's a little bit younger, somebody who's a tall black guy, somebody who's a shorter white woman. I mean, there's some interesting parallels to this, right? But in all seriousness, it really has to do with the level of experience, the level of energy, the level of excitement that we have to bring to it. Councilmember Nadell is tired. She doesn't want to really, I don't think she really wants this job anymore. We were at a SEIU endorsement panel that she started out by saying, I've been on the council 11 months, 9 days, 13 hours. And whenever people do that, it's like marking time. It's like if you were in prison, you'd be able to say, here's how long I've been in and here's how much time before I get out. Right. It came across that way.
So you're saying early release for time served?
Yeah. And we're going to help her out.
Okay. You have a favorite restaurant in Oakland?
Yeah, my house. It's called, Maison Myrtle. I travel a lot for work. I like eating at home. I cook. My wife cooks. And frankly, I like eating at home. But there's some great restaurants here in the city. For soul food, Nellie's. Swazik is a good restaurant. There's a lot of great places in Oakland that really compare well and compare favorably to other places around the country. I spend time in Portland and Seattle and other places around the country, and I think we've got great food here. But honestly, I like eating at my house.
Okay. Well,
and you?
And I, oh boy.
Your favorite restaurant, yeah.
I have a long list. In Oakland, I would start with Cesar.
Okay.
And move on over to Citron.
Okay.
And I like Oliveto. And then I'm going to get into trouble and start rattling off San Francisco restaurants.
Don't do it.
But we have this new restaurant in downtown Oakland called Flora. Okay. And I've been spending a lot of time there. And hopefully we'll have more restaurants in downtown Oakland. Okay. So...
And Lavende East?
I'm going to be a little harder on Lavende East. So they need to work on their rate as it relates to service. But we'll talk about that. We're going to do a food show. And actually, I'm going to have you
come on for the food show.
I'll have you on the food show.
I'll come back.
So let's kind of wrapping up this District 3 election. It's a sprint to June 3rd.
Sure.
A lot of ground to cover. As we close, what are the 3 things that you leave us with? What are the 3 most important messages you want to get out in regards to June 3rd?
Most important messages that as a candidate, I'm going to do my best to listen to what people have to say. When people say they want safer neighborhoods, when people say they want balanced development that's sustainable, when people say they want quality education, I'm listening. I want to be able to lift up those ideas, lift up innovation, lift up the tried and true things that we know that work, values at the community level that will make a difference on the safety issue, difference on education. And then lastly, leadership, to have the courage, to have the experience, to have the savvy, and frankly, the sense of humor to make things go well here. And I hope that people listen to that message of listening, lifting, and leading, and will get involved in the election. We'll talk to their neighbors. We'll debate the issues. We'll come out to forums. We'll be able to talk to young people who are new voters. I'm hoping that the new voters, folks who got registered because of the Clinton-Obama race, will actually continue to participate and make a difference. And so I'm hoping that, more than anything, I'm hoping that people will participate so we can create a safer city, a more vibrant economy here, and a place where we can be proud to say that we created a 21st century education system for all of our kids.
That's great. Well, Greg, I appreciate you taking the time with us today, and we hope to have you back on one of our panels or just to join us for our food segment.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, Phil.
All right.
Great. Good job.